Part 2.
Robin has her own very clear idea of what is fair and what isn't.
I wouldn't like to go to a private school to thinking that the kids in state schools wasn't like getting as much as I was, so it'd just be unfair.
So what would you do, shut the private schools down if you were running the world?
Yeah, I would.
Would you really?
I'd make people go to state schools.
All of them?
Yeah, so everyone has a fair and equal chance.
What Robin says might sound to you and me like typical youthful naivety, but not to one of our most respected education think tanks, the Sutton Trust. Its policy director is Lee Elliott Major.
In this country, the overwhelming factor in who does well is who your parents are. If you have families with lots of money and resources, they will increasingly spend them on ensuring that their children do the best they possibly can in terms of their life chances.
215 miles on the motorway from Kirby and approximately 100 light years in a social context is this.
It would be doing the play no justice to say it's a bleak play. You're not exploring it if you say it's bleak.
Chekhov sets up these three characters, and none of them achieve really what they want to, and they're all in a position almost worse off than at the beginning, because at least at the beginning of the play they still had hope.
Wellington College, pretty impressive, eh? One of the grandest of our great public schools. And if you want to send one of your little kiddies here, it'll cost you the thick end of £26,000 a year. And what do you get in return for that? Well, you get these magnificent buildings, you get 400 acres of rolling Berkshire countryside, superb facilities, the best teachers, the best education possible. You also get something else, of course, and that is a seat for your little kiddie, almost certainly anyway, at the top table in this country. If the social divide really does exist, and it does, then this is privilege writ large. Anthony Selden is master of Wellington College, and my question to him, what hope is there of narrowing the social divide when privilege such as this exists?
Britain over the last 25 years has become more socially divided. Now, is that not ironic when we've been putting more money into our state schools? I think that you could certainly get rid of Wellington College and get rid of every independent school in Britain. But what would happen, John, would be that new inequalities would arise.
But here we are, in a deeply divided country.
What I think is that divides are part of every society, if we are honest.
All right.
And I think the best societies try to minimise the divides and try and build bridges between the divides.
And those divides are not lost on these students.
There is obviously some people that do completely live in a bubble, but I think the vast majority of students here do appreciate that we are much more fortunate than many other people.
I don't know anyone here who thinks they're better than other people because they've got money. Our parents have worked hard for us to be here, and we've been given an opportunity that we have to take advantage of.
Nor is it lost on their teacher. At the risk of sounding terribly rude, isn't it easy to teach 7 bright young people as opposed to a class of 30 or something who don't really want to be there? I mean, I imagine, I may be wrong, I imagine these are highly motivated. And
They are.
Yeah, so it's easy.
Yeah.
Does that make you feel a bit guilty?
Yes.
Why aren't you off in an inner city gasworks comprehensive?
I'm a big fan of the comprehensive system, but then you wouldn't know it given the fact I teach here.
If you look at the international comparisons, the UK has the biggest achievement gap between independent schools and state schools than any other country in the world. So we have a very powerful independent school sector, incredibly successful schools, and the state sector has a breadth of schools with maybe different challenges.
There's always going to be a huge gap between the extremes of Wellington College and Kirby always has been, always will be. The real battle is being fought on the centre ground, the ground dominated by what David Cameron calls the sharp-elbowed middle class. He says he's one of them. I suppose I am. Maybe you are as well. And we've always held the advantage. And we want to hold on to it. Well, we would, wouldn't we? And every so often the politicians say that they have an answer for it. And here's the latest one. Parental choice. What a good idea. Obviously parents should have some say over which school their children go to. But here's the question. If parents can, theoretically at any rate, choose the best school for their children, who benefits? Answer, the middle class. And if you want proof of that, welcome to Mumsnet. Mumsnet is almost synonymous with the cliched phrase sharp-elbowed parents. It's an online blog made up predominantly of educated, well-off, clued-up mothers. So, when I began making this film, I held what they call a web chat, supervised by the co-founder, Justine Roberts. Are you so unhappy with what's on offer that you will actually manipulate the system? I wanted to get a sense of the lengths these parents would go to, or they'd say they're being driven to, in search of a good education for their children. We were lucky enough to get our child into a village school 3 miles away. The council wouldn't offer transport, etc. I had to drive my daughter to and from school every day for 3 years, and because of that I couldn't get a job. Luckily my husband had supported us all, just barely. If he hadn't, we'd have had no choice but accept the place in the school under special measures. Their Ofsted report was awful. We're now in debt, which we wouldn't have been if A, both schools were up to scratch, and B, the council had offered transport.
So that's not choice, is it? Mums and dads are pretty obsessed by education. I think they're very troubled by this notion of choice and what they have to do to be good parents to get the best for their children. And there have been some fantastic posts about, what people can do about it. I don't think there are any easy answers, though, because what you want for society is not necessarily the choice you're going to make for your own child.
That's the point, isn't it? I wonder whether, because I've had an experience with my own child.
Okay.
I live on the edge of a park, and if you turn left out of my house, you cross the park and you're within about 100 yards of a very nice state school. However, the authority said we couldn't turn left because the park isn't a public highway. We had to turn right, which meant a detour, and that put us too far away from the school. So he couldn't go to that primary school. Bonkers.
And is the school on the other side of the park completely different?
Yes.
Instead, the school that was offered
was nothing like as good, I think.
We wrestle with this idea that actually we'd all love to be good citizens, go to the local state school, make the best of it we can, put all our efforts into it, but if we think we're compromising our child, that makes us feel like bad parents.
So what do we do about it? Well, unsurprisingly, we the middle class invest our money, our energy, our ingenuity in giving our children the best. More than ever before, according to Professor Stephen Ball of the Institute of Education.
The middle classes are incredibly sophisticated in their ability to adapt to the competitive pressures of the system they find themselves in. Most of the research suggests that most middle-class parents, and there are always exceptions, but we're talking about most middle-class parents, when they're thinking about choice of school, will be looking across a huge range of schools, often in a wide area, particularly in metropolitan areas, to find the right school for their child.
So questions part 2. The Sutton Trust says what about equal opportunities? Wellington College charges how much? And what do the parents get in return? What does the phrase the sharp-elbowed middle class mean? Parental choice, who benefits and why? What evidence of the sharp-elbowed middle class does he get from Mumsnet? And what does Stephen Ball from the Institute of Education say?